A few months ago, every single one of my classmates, including myself, was told that they have to start on a junior project. Now, once you become a junior at Chinquapin, your junior project is probably one of the things that you dread the most. Frankly, I had no idea what to do, and so I asked the current seniors at my school about what to do. And for most of them, when they heard the words junior project, they chuckled, and they gave me that look as if you're about to embark on a year and semester of pure sleepless nights look. But that didn't really help me, and so I talked to more seniors about it, and they told me that, oh, well, it has to be something that benefits the community in some sort of way. And after hearing that, I really had no idea what to do. But as me and my classmates walked into junior seminar class on the first day of school, our teacher, Dorothy Scrutchen, told the entire class that your project could be about whatever you want. It's all about you. And the minute she said that, the whole entire class took the breath of relief, like, oh, thank God. But now I felt like as if I had too much freedom because I had so many projects, so many ideas I wanted to do that I couldn't pick one. And whatever project I wanted to do, I wanted it to have a bang. I wanted it to have a huge impact on whatever it would set out to accomplish. But I just didn't know what it was yet. One day, however, I was scrolling through my school's website, and I happened to stumble upon a news clip about my school. And I was like, hey, this is pretty interesting, and so I watched it. And what it basically displayed was the mission of our school, and that is to give college preparatory education to the low-income families of the greater Houston area. But that didn't really stand out to me because I've heard it about 1,000 times. But what stood out to me was the interviews and the people that they interviewed. In this news clip, they interviewed former seniors of last year at my school, Jessica Bernal and Rasan King. And what stood out to me was that each one of them had a purpose. They had a purpose why they wanted to come to Chinquapin. Rasan, he wanted to come to Chinquapin because he didn't want to go back to public school where there was gangs and violence. Jessica, she wanted to be the first generation in her family to be able to go to college. And after hearing that, I look at myself, and I wonder, what's my purpose? Why have I been at Chinquapin for 4 years? And in order to answer that question, I had to do a bit of reflecting, and I had to dig up my past for answers. But why once again? Well, I tried long and hard to lock up my past, throw away the key, and forget that it ever existed. But the reason why I'm able to talk to you guys, my project is based off of events in my past. And as I reflected that day, fortunately I was home, it felt like a ton of bricks. And I remember just crying and saying to myself repeatedly, why me? Why did I have to go through all of this? Well, my father, he was never really home. He was always going out, getting drunk, making my mom come pick him up, and then he comes home drunk. But the importance of this is, he was never really there in my life. He was never there in 4th grade graduation, never there in my orchestra concerts. He was there physically, but as a father, he was never there. And at the time, I lived in a very nice house. And it was basically my childhood house. Me and my brother, we grew up and we lived there for the majority of our lives. But as we would later find out, my dad basically bought a house that he couldn't afford. And why did he do that? Only to show off to his friends. It had nothing to do with the family. And me and my brother, we were up one night, and we hear yelling and screaming downstairs. And we didn't know what it was, but then as we peeked down the staircase, we see that our parents are arguing. And we didn't know what they were arguing about, but they were just arguing. And this persisted about intermittently for about 3 years. And then after those 3 years, my dad just got up and left. He told me and my brother that he had to go somewhere and he would be home soon. But he didn't come home that night. He didn't come home the night after that or the night after that. And without him, the bills aren't being paid. And if the bills aren't being paid, I walk home from school one day and I see the eviction notice on the door. And I didn't know what that was at the moment, but I walk in, and then my mom tells me with a straight face, son, pack up your things. We have to go in 30 days. And at first, it didn't really sink in. It didn't really sink in that we were moving. But it wasn't until after the first week when me and my brother were having heavy couches down the stairs that it really sunk in that we are literally moving. And that night, I prayed to God, and I made a deal with him that I didn't care where I moved, I didn't care how many times I moved. I just wanted what was left of my family, and that was my mom and my brother. The next day, my mom took us out to eat. And me and my brother, we were chatting with each other. My mom was talking with her friend. But when we got into the car, me and my brother, we were still talking, but I overheard my mom talking to her friend about what has happened so far, about my dad leaving, the eviction notice, and moving. And all of a sudden, me and my brother, we fall silent because we heard somebody starting to cry. And it turns out that it was my mom. And she repeatedly kept on saying, I can't do this. What about my boys? How will they go to college? And when you hear your mom cry, and you hear her cry for years and years on end, it gnaws at you because for the first time in my life, I was helpless, and I couldn't do anything about it. But with this, my project is to create a documentary about my school, Chinquapin, because it was ultimately Chinquapin that helped me to recover from events in my past. I came to Chinquapin while these events were happening, and sometimes it felt like I was taking a bus ride to do two different problems. I go to Chinquapin, take the bus ride to Chinquapin. I was struggling academically when I first came there. I take the bus ride home, and it was a matter of gambling of when was the next time I'm going to move. And juggling both of them, it was overwhelming. But Chinquapin ultimately taught me how to study, ultimately taught me what it really means to study for an A. But what it really taught me was that people do care, that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to express things that make you feel emotionally weak. And I remember at my first year at Chinquapin, 7th grade, I was in young men's group, and that night all the guys sat down together. And that night, I let everything out, and I broke down on the spot. But what I also realized that day, that my friends, my dorm mates, my brothers, they also go through the same difficult problems themselves. And that day, we all cried together. But when I see that we all have that bond, that we all come from different walks of life. But the reason why we came to Chinquapin was so to get an education and to make sure that we do not let our kids face the same problems that we did. My documentary will display the impact that Chinquapin has had on students' lives. And ultimately, I want to emphasize, and I want to let the world know the bonds that we have at Chinquapin. Because ultimately, our school as a whole is a family. And that with that, we know each other's strengths, but we also know each other's weaknesses. But with those weaknesses, we don't use them to bring each other down, but rather we help each other to get past those weaknesses and turn those weaknesses into our strengths, just like how Chinquapin has done for me. Thank you.